All right, Shalom. First, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. Um, Today, I'm going to Daniel, the fifth chapter. All right, just going through the chapter itself. Okay, but just pointing out a few key points. All right, as I go through it. Okay, as you can see in the title, it says filling in the pieces of Daniel 5. All right, and this is an example here of why you need to know the history, all right, to understand the mystery, as the elders like to say. Okay, and so Lord willing, we're gonna go through it. All right, get a little bit more information. All right, in secular history to back up the scriptures. Okay, and Lord willing, this be edifying to the elect. All right, because as a matter of fact, let me just get a quick precept. Okay, because hey, as a part of being a prophet is also you have to be a scholar. You have to do your research. Okay, and what we do is we filter um, history through the scriptures, not the other way around. Okay, because there's times when you have certain um, inaccuracies, or you might read somewhere where they'll try to disprove the Bible or try to say there's certain parts of the scriptures that are not valid based on what they or what Esau has said. All right, is history, but we then also know that Esau, which is the so-called white man, then also likes to twist. All right, the information he gets. He has this thing called disinformation. All right, where he'll give you information, but he also put lies in there. All right, to throw you off. But their top elites, the Rothschilds, the Gettys, the higher ups, they get the archaeological proof and the different records, all right, and they link it up with the scriptures and they say, okay, yeah, this is true. But they're not gonna come out and let the masses know that it's true, okay, because they're trying to lie. And lying is bending the truth. So in order to lie, you have to know the truth. All right. So as the scriptures say here, this is 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. It says, study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And that's why we go into these words, all right, and we go into the history, and we go into the geography, and all these different aspects to understand, okay, what the scriptures are referring to, or get a clearer and better understanding of what a particular precept might be talking about, right? So an example, let's look up the word approved and see what we get. All right, so this is approved in the Greek dokimos. It says accepted, particularly of coins and money, and we're considered a gold. Gold is a form of money. Accepted, pleasing, acceptable. All right, so we have to study to show ourselves acceptable unto the Most High, because the Most High is the power of wisdom. Okay, so if we're going to represent the Most High by Hashem Yahweh Shai, we need to be wise. We need to study unto salvation. The scriptures say wisdom cometh by leisure, okay, which is the time that you set aside to invest, all right, in your spiritual growth. All right. So it says a workman that needeth not to be ashamed. Why? Because if you studied what you're talking about, all right, you're not gonna be weak in what you're saying, and you're not gonna fumble, all right, or be shaky or unsure about what you're saying. Because if you do that, somebody can easily come and ask you a certain question, and here it is, you could end up getting confounded, and in turn you'll be ashamed. But if this is your craft and you study it, all right, and you perfect it, then you have no reason to be ashamed. You'll be bold, as the scriptures say. All right, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, because that's our job. That's why we've been set up. So with that, let's go into here. This is Daniel chapter 5, verse 1. It says, now there's in the secular history, you have certain things that, certain information that we can use definitely to validate or match it with the scriptures. And then you have other parts that are speculation. All right. So you can't take it as hardcore fact. All right. Nonetheless, we're going to go through it. All right. So this is Daniel chapter 5, verse 1. It says, Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Now we got to stop right here, okay? And we got to address this. It says Belshazzar the king, okay? Now Belshazzar, when you read in Daniel the 5th chapter, was the supposed last king, all right, of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, all right? The Neo-Babylonian meaning the New Babylonian Empire, all right? Now, when you go into the secular history, all right, as a matter of fact, let's type that in here real quick. Let's type in the Neo, or the last king of the Neo. Okay, who was the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire? It says here it was Nabonidus. All right. So now you're reading the scriptures say Belshazzar was the king. All right. But when you look it up, it says here that Nabonidus was the king. You know, so now you're like, wait, but something's not adding up here. What's going on? Okay. So let's read up on Belshazzar's tab. Let's see who was Belshazzar, and let's clarify that part right there. All right. So it says here, Belshazzar, Bel protect the king. That's what it means. Was the eldest son of Nabonidus, the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So Nabonidus was the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. All right. And it says here, and regent for his father during the latter's prolonged absence from the city. Okay. So what is that? What is now you understand why it says here that Belshazzar was king, but when you look into secular history, it says Nabonidus was king. Why? Because Belshazzar was the regent for his father Nabonidus, the actual official king, while his father was out. All right. And when you read it, it says he went about basically to restore temples, all right, to his favorite god, the moon god Sin. Okay. And so it says here, he may have been killed when Babylon fell to the Persians in 539 BC. All right. Now let's look up a regent or a king regent. As it says here, Belshazzar was a regent, right? So it says a regent, ruling, governing, is a person appointed to govern a state because the monarch is a minor, is absent, or is incapacitated. The rule of a regent or regents is called a regency. All right, a regent or regency council may be formed. All right, and then it goes on, so on and so forth. But we basically got the point here. All right, so a regent is somebody that rules in the stead of the king. Why? Because if the king is either a minor, he's too young to rule, or the king is absent, as in the case we have here, or the king is incapacitated. He's incapable of ruling. All right, and that's when you would set up a regent. Okay, so Belshazzar, in essence, was actually a king regent. Okay, he wasn't the official king, but he was the ruler or the regent while his father Nabonidus was out. Okay, so at this time Belshazzar was in charge. All right, so it says Belshazzar the king made a great feast on to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. So they had a party. Verse 2, Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels, all right, which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem. Now you read this and you say, wait, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, but it says Belshazzar's father was Nabonidus. So why do the scriptures say his father Nebuchadnezzar? Well, this is why you got to look up the words. All right, because when you go into the word here in the Hebrew, you go, or the Aramaic, same thing. All right, it slightly differs, but it's basically the same thing. It says his father. When you look up that word father, all right, in the Hebrew, it's what? Abba. Okay. Now Abba can mean your straight up first father, or it could mean, let's read it here, father of an individual, of the Most High as father of his people, head or founder of a household, group, family, or clan, an ancestor, a grandfather, forefathers of persons, of people, originator or patron of a class. All right. So when it says Abba, Abba can be referring to your grandfather, your ancestor, so on and so forth. All right. So with that in mind, we're going to go back okay, and read that verse again. So it says here that and where was I? Here we go. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar, or his forefather, or grandfather, or ancestor, okay, Nebuchadnezzar. Because when you look it up, all right, let's do some quick comparisons here, right? Let's look up Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar the second. That's the guy we're looking for, which Nebuchadnezzar was an Assyrian. All right. He was not a Cushite. He was not a Hamite. He was an Assyrian. Okay. Cushites, all right, or Cush, Kawath, come from Ham. All right. The Syrians, okay, or sorry, the Assyrians, all right, which come from Ashur, are Shemites. All right. They come from Shem. So they were two different people. But in Babylon, you had Assyrians ruling over, and it was sort of like a melting pot because you had like Kassites and you had certain quote unquote Indo-Europeans and you had Hamites in there as well. Okay, so let's see Belshazzar, right? Let's go down. What am I looking for here? Let's see if it gives me the time. Okay, Belshazzar, king of Babylon, he ruled from 550, or let's say he was here 550 to 539, right? That's about yeah, okay, 550 to 539. Now let's look up Nebuchadnezzar. All right, Nebuchadnezzar, it says here, was from 605 to 562. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar died in 562. So Nebuchadnezzar's time was way prior to Belshazzar. So we know and we understand that it's not his literal father, but possibly his grandfather, all right, or his great grandfather. Now the thing about because Belshazzar was a descendant of Nebuchadnezzar, as the scriptures tell you, okay, but exactly how is where scholars and historians have a speculation on that. All right, because there's a widely, like an example of one of the widely or the commonly accepted theories is that Belshazzar was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar through his mother's side. Okay, so let's look up Belshazzar. Where is it at? Okay, when you go to the dictionaries, which is a tool you can use here. All right, let's say let's try the Eastern's Bible Dictionary. All right, okay. Let me see if this is the one I'm looking for. If it mentions, okay, let's read through it and see if it mentions. It says, so Belshazzar, Bel protect the king, the last of the kings of Babylon. He was the son of Nabonidus there we go. He was the son of Nabonidus by Nitocris. Okay, and it says here, who was the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar and the widow of Nergal-Sharezer, or Neriglisar, as you read about in history. All right. So it says here that Nitocris was so now let's go through the line, right? Let's go through the line. We're on the tab here of Nebuchadnezzar, right? Nebuchadnezzar the second. Okay. It says here, Nebuchadnezzar, he died in 562. His spouse was Amethyst of Media. Why? Because Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians and the Medians had formed an alliance through marriage. So Nebuchadnezzar's father and the king of the Medes at the time, which was Cyaxares, they formed an alliance by having their children married. So Amethyst was a Median. All right, that's why it says Amethyst of Media. Oh, actually, look, it says it. Amuhia, or Amethyst of Media, was the daughter of or granddaughter of the Median king Cyaxares and the wife of Nebuchadnezzar. So they married to have that alliance, right? It says here, house Assyrian. See? So Nebuchadnezzar was an Assyrian. His father was an Assyrian. All right, now I want to see where it gives us his kids or his children. Okay, it probably might not show it here, but when you go through the lineage, it's going to show you here. you had the one who ruled before Nebuchadnezzar was Nabopolassar, which was his father, right? And then Nebuchadnezzar came to rule. And then after Nebuchadnezzar, you had Amel Marduk, all right, which was the son of Nebuchadnezzar. So we're going to click on this guy, right? It says Amel Marduk was, which in the Bible you read him, his name is Evil Merodach. All right, that's how it's written in the Bible. But that evil does not have any correlation with the meaning of evil as we know it today. It's just how what it translates to. All right. It says here, so Amel Marduk was succeeded, all right, meaning the person who took after him was this guy right here, Neriglasar. Okay. And Neriglasar, as we're reading of in the definition, all right, it says here, Bel protect the king, the last of the kings of Babylon. He was the son of Nabonidus by Nitocris, who was the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar and the widow of Nergal-Sharezer, which Nergal-Sharezer, another way of saying that is, you see, Nergal-Sharezer or Neriglasar. So Neriglasar's original wife, all right, according to what we're reading here, was Nitocris, but Neriglasar seems to have died because it says Nitocris was a widow, all right? So after Neriglasar died, okay, that's when you had when Nabonidus came into power, which is the father of Belshazzar. He basically took this man, Neriglasar's wife, who was a widow at the time, all right, and made her his wife, all right. So it's all gonna make sense. Just keep watching. So you have Neriglasar. After him, Labishai Marduk. It says Labishai Marduk, son of Neriglasar. All right. Now, after Nabishai Marduk, that's when you had Nabonidus. So even there, you see how many different people you had before you get to Belshazzar. All right, going from Nebuchadnezzar all the way down to Amel Marduk, Neriglasar, Labishai Marduk, and then Nabonidus. Right. So now let's go back in here and let's read. It says here, Bel protect the king, which is Belshazzar. He was the son of Nabonidus by Nitocris. So if they're saying Nitocris was the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar, all right, and the mother of Belshazzar. So that would link Belshazzar to Nebuchadnezzar, all right, through his mother's line or through Nebuchadnezzar's daughter's line. All right. And like I said, this isn't in stone. This is from what the historians have gathered from the evidence that they have, what they've put together. Okay. So it says here, so that would make like we just read here, Nabonidus' wife Nitocris, all right, which would have been the mother of Belshazzar and the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar, making the Belshazzar Nebuchadnezzar's grandson through his mother's line, according to what we're reading here. All right. It says here, when still young, he made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords. And when heated with wine, sent for the sacred vessels of his father or grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar, or grandfather Nebuchadnezzar had carried away from the temple in Jerusalem. Because remember, another fact about Nebuchadnezzar, all right, was what? Okay, I'm gonna have to just look him up here. He destroyed, all right, he had Jerusalem besieged, all right, and it was destroyed. Okay, it was burnt down and all of that. Okay, I think portrayal in the Bible, it should come up here. It says here, the Babylonian king's 2 sieges of Jerusalem in 597 and 587 BC are depicted in 2 Kings 2 and 2 Kings 24 to 25, which in 597, that's when remember, in 605, all right, that's when he took the nobilities. That's when he took Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and so on and so forth. And then in 597, the captives that were taken then, Ezekiel was a part of that. Okay. And then in 587, which is about 10 years later, okay, that's when he came and besieged and destroyed Jerusalem. He broke down the walls, burnt the temple, so on and so forth. So when you read in the book of Ezekiel, you'll read how Ezekiel is actually prophesying against Jake that's doing wickedness in Israel about what's about to happen to them, the same thing Jeremiah was doing. When you read in the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah prophesies, all right, about the impending destruction of Jerusalem by the king of Babylon. All right. It says here, the book of Jeremiah calls Nebuchadnezzar the destroyer of nations, Jeremiah 4:7, and gives an account of the second siege of Jerusalem in 587 BC and the looting and destruction of the first temple, which is in the book of Jeremiah 39, verse 1 to 10, and 52, chapter 52, 1 to 30. Nebuchadnezzar's assault on Egypt 4 months before the fall of Jerusalem in 587 is represented in Ezekiel as a divine initiative undertaken by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. So we're keeping in mind that Nebuchadnezzar was known as that king who had destroyed Jerusalem, okay? And that's why during the time of Cyrus, we had to go back and rebuild, okay? So this was when the first temple was destroyed. And then it was rebuilt and then destroyed again, all right, during the time of the siege of Jerusalem, around 70 AD. Okay, so let's keep reading in here. So it says, our grandfather Nebuchadnezzar had carried away from the temple in Jerusalem, because after they took it down, they took out all the gold and all the valuable things, all right, from it, which were the gold vessels and so on and so forth. It says, and he and his princes drank out of them. In the midst of their mad revelry, a hand was seen by the king, tracing on the wall, on the wall, the announcement of God's judgment, which that night fell upon him, at the instance of the queen, i.e., his mother. Okay, the queen, i.e., his mother. Daniel was brought in, and he interpreted the writing. That night, the kingdom of the Chaldeans, which were the upper classmen, all right, came to an end, and the king was slain, which we're gonna read about. Okay, so now we understand, all right, pursuant to verse 1, why it says Belshazzar is a king, and we also understand who was Belshazzar, who was his father, how is he related to Nebuchadnezzar. All right, so let's keep going. Verse 3. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem. Because remember, right now we're in the book where Belshazzar is at. They're in Babylon. Okay, they're in Babylon right now. Let's pull that up. Let's pull up Babylonian or Neo-Babylonian Empire. Okay. All right. So let's see what we have here. All right. So you see Babylon is over here, right? And you have Jerusalem, which is all the way over here. Okay, so this is they after this was destroyed, we're not this is why you got to look at the geography, man, because where's Belshazzar at the time? He's here. Okay, so just to point that out, just to make it easier to picture in your mind. All right, it says of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines drank in them. All right. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand. Now here's where it got spooky. And wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. So all you see is a nice hand, all right, just writing things upon the wall. All right. Now, how scary you think that is? It says, and the king saw the part the part of the hand that wrote. So he just saw a hand writing on the wall. Okay. It says, then the king's countenance was changed. All right. His countenance meaning his look. So remember, he's drinking, he's having fun. But when he sees this writing on the wall, his face changes. His whole mood just got killed. Because he's like, what in the hell is that? Imagine you at a party and you chilling and everything is all good. Okay. And all of a sudden, all the lights go out and all you see is just a fire in the corner and then a hand just writing on the wall. That whole mood of, oh, it's lit. Oh, yeah. Oh, shit. You go. That's all going to stop. And everybody's going to be scared. So it's the same thing that happened to this king right here. It says, and the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him because he got scared. Now he's thinking, what the hell's going on here? So that the joints of his loins were loosened or loosed, and his knees smote one against another. You know, when you're shaking uncontrollably out of fear, that's what this guy was experiencing. And the king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. All right, and these are all those who are considered the wise men. Why? Because they tapped into the knowledge of the left hand side. Okay. It says, and the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Okay. It says, then came in the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished or astonied. All right, because they were all shook up. All right. Now the queen, which was his mother, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. So she wasn't there when they were partying, but because the party came to a halt, everybody's stressed. The mother came. All right. It says, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There is a man in thy kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of thy father or thy grandfather, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods. And she was talking about Daniel. All right. It says, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made master of magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. Now, if you're paying attention to how the queen is speaking to Belshazzar, she's not speaking as a wife, she's speaking as a mother. And now the way she's speaking about Daniel, she's speaking as though she was there, or she was around that time when this happened. So she's telling Belshazzar, yo, don't worry, man, because back in the time of when your grandfather Nebuchadnezzar was da 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 da, there was a man Daniel. So she's speaking as though, you know, like I knew about this. I know about this guy because I was there. You know, it says verse 12, for as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams and showing of hard sentences and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. It says, when then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, art thou that Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father, which is talking about Nebuchadnezzar, brought out of Jewry, which is Jerusalem? Because remember, in 605, when Nebuchadnezzar, after he had defeated the Egyptians, he took the nobility from Jerusalem, okay, back with him to Babylon to train them so that he could use them, all right, within his kingdom to make his kingdom better. All right. Verse 14. And I have heard, it says, I have heard of thee that the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me. And it's funny because Nebuchadnezzar went through the same trouble, where his wise men couldn't answer, couldn't explain to him his dream. And if it wasn't for Daniel, he was about to slay all of them. It says, and that they should read this writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee that thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now, if thou canst read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. All right. Now, why is Belshazzar asking Daniel, okay, to give him the interpretation? It wasn't that he couldn't read the language, all right, but he didn't understand what does this mean? Why is it written here? And we're going to get to that point. Verse 17. It says, then Daniel answered and said before the king, let thy gifts be to thyself, meaning I don't need your gifts, all right? And give thy rewards to another. You can give all that to somebody else. Yet I will read the writing unto the king and make known to him the interpretation. So Daniel was like, I don't work for hire, basically. You don't have to give me all these gifts and stuff. All right, I'm going to tell you what it is, and that's it. Verse 18, O thou king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom, and majesty and glory and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Why? Because when the Babylonians were ruling, all right, they had their time to rule. Daniel 4 and 17, the Most High set them up to rule, so everybody else had to be subject under them. It says, whom he slew, and whom he kept alive, and whom he set up, and whom he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, meaning he got proud, and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beast. Now, your heart in the Hebrew means, in the Hebrew is lab, which means your mind. All right. So the Lord gave Nebuchadnezzar the mind of an animal. All right. That's why it says here, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven. So the Most High literally put him in an animalistic state of mind to where he was eating grass and living like an animal. Okay. And that shows you the fear of the Lord, man, that he can actually do something like this to you. It says, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointed over it whomsoever he will. So the Most High humbled Nebuchadnezzar by showing him that, look, you only up here because I put you here. So don't get proud and think that is of your own power. Because the same way I can put you up here, I can bring you so low that you'll be lower, you'll be in a lower state than the lowest peasant in your kingdom. Because even the peasants weren't on their walking on all fours eating grass like Nebuchadnezzar did. And that was a humbling experience. Verse 22. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knowest all this, but is lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels, of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them. And because those were sacred vessels, man. All right. So number one, you're a heathen. And number two, this is what you're doing while you're drinking out of them. It says what? And thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know. And the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. All right. Then was the part of the hand sent from him. And this was the writing. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. All right. It says, this is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. All right. Now, keep in mind, this right here, because I'm going to look it up right here, right? We're going to look up Mene. All right. And it says what? Aramaic. Okay. Mene, which is mina or mena, which is a weight or measurement, usually 50 shekels, but maybe 60 shekels, right? So what was written on the wall wasn't some weird language that they couldn't read. They could read it, but that's like if you see a writing on the wall that says dollar, nickel, dime, you know, or $1.50 nickel. You know what a dollar is. You know what 50 cents are. You know what that means. But you don't understand, why is that written? What was the meaning behind why this is written here? Why are you writing dollar? Why are you writing measurements? All right, that's what Belshazzar wanted to understand. So Daniel was breaking it down to him, and he says, what? This is the interpretation of the thing. Many, which is a measurement, the Most High had numbered thy kingdom and finished it. All right, so that's like a quarter. The Most High has numbered your kingdom and finished it. It says, tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Okay, now let's look this up. Okay, let's look up Wade. All right, to weigh shekel. All right, actually, I wanted to look up tekel, not weigh. Okay, tekel. All right, it says to weigh, to be weighed, shekel, a unit of weight, a shekel. Okay, so once again, it's a unit of weight. So Daniel was saying, okay, where you saw $1.50 quarter, this is what it means. This is why. This is what the quarter on the wall means. It means that your kingdom has been numbered. All right, and it's finished. A dollar means, you know, such and such, right? Also wanted to look up wanting. Okay, it says wanting, lacking, wanting, deficient. Let's see what we have here in the Hebrew. Okay, to lack, to be lacking. Okay. All right, so let's keep going with it. It says, so we have mini, tickle, and we have Perez. It says, Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So that's like if you get to the dollar, quarter, 50 cents. And then he's like 50 cents. Well, 50 cents is half of a dollar. Okay. So your kingdom has been divided. Okay. And half of it is going to go to the Medes and half to the Persians. All right. And we understood that those who took over, all right, they took over after the Babylonians or the Medo-Persians, primarily the Persians. Though the Medes were still living amongst them, the Persians had the higher rule. All right. So it says here, verse 29, then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet. All right. Now let's look this up here. It says they clothed him with scarlet, purple, red, purple. Now I clicked on this because it wasn't just a regular scarlet or a regular red or a regular purple, because we understand that purple means royalty, right? But why is purple representative of royalty? Well, when you go back, okay, which I have it here, you have something called a Tyrian purple, which, as you can see, Tyrian comes from Tyre, all right, or the Phoenicians. So it says here, Tyrian purple, all right, also known as Tyrian red, Phoenician purple, royal purple, imperial purple, or imperial dye, is a reddish purple natural dye. It is a secretion produced by several species of predatory sea snails in the family Muricidae. It says rock snails originally known by the name murex. In ancient times, extracting this dye involved tens of thousands of snails and substantial labor. So it was a lot of work just to get this purple dye. That made it super rare. And what do we know about supply and demand? All right, the lower the supply, the higher the demand, and that means what? The value goes up. So it says here, and as a result, the dye was highly valued. So this reddish purple dye, or the Tyrian purple, okay, was a highly valuable, okay, color. So if they made a garment out of it, or they made a robe or something out of it, it was valuable. That's why it represents nobility, because only those who were of a rich stock could afford it. All right, that's why only those that were rich would have it. Okay, so it says here, Belshazzar commanded that they clothe Daniel with scarlet, which we looked it up. It was a what? A reddish purple, which is that Tyrian purple. That's why that it represents. That's why it's not just, oh, just throw a red garment on him. No, this was a special kind. It says, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, concerning who? Daniel, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. Now, why did Belshazzar declare Daniel the third ruler in the kingdom? Well, as we started off the lesson, we said that Belshazzar was not the official king, but it was his father, Nabonidus, who was the actual king. Belshazzar was a king regent, somebody who was in charge, all right, while his father was away. So that made Belshazzar really the second in command, all right, because his father was the king. He was under his father as the king regent. Now, if Belshazzar was the second in command, then if he wanted to make Daniel or put him in a high position, the highest position he could put Daniel in would be the third. All right, because Daniel would be the third, Belshazzar would be the second, and Nabonidus would be the first. Okay, so that's why it says here that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And then it goes on, verse 30. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. All right, because you had you had that night, you had Cyrus gave that command. Okay, and Belshazzar was taken out. All right, it wasn't, Babylon didn't go down, all right, by fire and by all this destruction, and no. Okay, and that's why, and that's how we know that the distinction between the two Babylons we read about in the scriptures, when it's talking about ancient Babylon and when it's referring on to modern day Babylon, which is America, because it says one of the Babylons is going to be uninhabited, it's going to be completely destroyed, all right, with fire. Now, when Babylon went down, guess what? Where's Babylon located? Modern day Iraq, right? Iraq, people still live there. So we know that that's not talking about ancient Babylon, because ancient Babylon didn't go out that way. The king was taken out and the kingdom was given to Darius. It says, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. That's about 62 years old, right? Because 6 and 2, 62. Now, Darius the Mede, okay, Darius the Mede, when you look him up, he was actually the his real name, or his historical name, was Astyages, all right, or Astyages, which he was the grandfather, all right, of Cyrus through Cyrus's mother's side, because Darius was a Median and Cyrus was a Persian, okay. But what happened was that when Cyrus took over the kingdom from his grandfather Darius, or Astyages, okay, he didn't kill his grandfather, all right. He actually treated him good, and in turn gave him one of the provinces, which one of those was Babylon, okay. And so when it says here Darius the Mede, or Darius the Median, took the kingdom, when you look up this word took, okay, and it says what? To receive. Now, if you're receiving something, that means that it's being given to you, okay. So after Belshazzar was taken out, that province of Babylon was given to Darius the Mede, okay, by the command of Cyrus, which was technically his grandson, okay, because his 62-year-old ass wasn't jumping around cutting heads off and doing all that, okay. But yeah, that was basically it, okay. And that's why, like I titled it, filling in the pieces, okay, which you got to understand that there's a difference, all right, because the scriptures tell you clearly, is the scriptures clearly state that you're not supposed to add to the scriptures or take away from the scriptures, okay. But there's a difference between adding, when you're making up your own shit, and adding it in here and say, no, this is what it is, this is what it means. No, that is going off, all right. But then there's the part where you have to study to show yourself approved. So in order to understand what this means, to cause the understanding, you got to study the history, all right. So when you read this, you understand the pieces that aren't necessarily written in here. You understand why certain precepts say what they say, because behind the scenes, this is what it's talking about. This is what happened, okay. So that's pretty much it, okay. Just wanted to go through that real quick. All right, Lord's willing was edifying unto the elect, okay. And these are just certain things that if you don't look them up, okay, you won't understand it, okay. And that's why, hey, when you read about certain characters, because you have historical characters that are actually written by name in the Bible. If you look up Cyrus the Great, he was somebody that actually lived. Shalmaneser, he was somebody that actually lived, okay. Claudius, okay. Nebuchadnezzar, these are actual real people that lived. So when you can look them up in in history and read about them, and majority of them left records of their interactions with us as Israelites, whether they took us over or they lost to us or whatever the case may be, and you can compare that with the scriptures and see that what it's valid. For example, the Meshastel, okay, the Moabite stone. That's the king of Moab. Mesha was writing. He was praising his Moabite god Chemosh, but he was also you have it in there. He talks about the house of David, and he mentions Yahweh in there, because the Moabites were subject under us, but after a certain point in time, they broke free. Okay, so you have a Moabite that's recording our existence. So where do you get off talking about the scriptures are not real and Israelites never existed and all these extra? That's not even any scholar will look at you like you're ignorant for making a statement like that. Okay, but hence this is just, more proof, man, that the scriptures are valid, man. Okay, so like I said, I'm gonna end it here. Okay, Lord willing, this was edifying unto the elect. All right, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakha Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.